I die at every instant, and I'm reborn, new and without memory, alive and whole, no longer inside myself, but in everything outside. Hello, I'm Clara, legally Clarada. I am a poet, or I prefer not to define myself as not like any one thing, but at this moment I think you could define me as a poet. However, I'm whatever you perceive. Even as an artist, I wouldn't like to define myself as necessarily one thing, but for your knowledge, I'm a poet. Luck is in the Leftovers is many things, one of which my debut poetry collection. But it's also a Japanese saying that really resonated with me and chose as the title of the collection because it encompasses all that is true in my life, or that my luck comes from the indifference that this world has towards my will. My luck has always been in the leftovers of my life, and I guess poetry is also one of them, which made me incredibly happy. So I decided to dedicate this book to the leftovers. I'd like to say that this collection came to be in two phases. I'm not going to explain much, but I would say that the beginning of it came from meeting a stranger in a smoking area, and the finalization of it was meeting Petra and the Femme Social Press. The collection came to be from a need to express, but truly the luck was in very random moments that were just extremely lucky, and I didn't really think much of them until they led to the creation of the collection. So, foreign state of detachment is a term I invented out of thin air just to describe the feeling that I get being bilingual but not native, born and raised in a country that was English speaking. I adore writing poetry in English because of this state. This state comes from the fact that if I say the word joy, I don't associate necessarily anything subconscious and immediate to it, just the word itself. I know what it means. But if I said gioia in Italian, I would get a feeling, I would get immediate connection. So the foreign state of detachment, as I coin it, it's the state in which I'm able to see the word as an object quite easily because it's in English. It's a tool that allows me to be more creative and emotionally detached without necessarily being too biased. And it's also quite fun because writing English is way easier than writing in Italian. The words have similar consonants and length and stresses, and it's really easy in that sense. So I call the foreign state of detachment the emotional disconnection that I have towards the language, but that also allows me to be more connected to poetry and seeing words as an object and a tool. So the imagery of food opens up every chapter. Each food is something that has a symbolic value to me, the food that I chose in the titles. Generally, food is something that we take a bit for granted nowadays, and sometimes we might also have in excess of, and the decay of it, the leftover where you sometimes find lack or you forget about it. So I just think food is a beautiful metaphor for many events in my life that are marked with the names of some leftover food throughout the book. I think it is hard to define what is daring anymore in poetry. It's really hard to even understand the moment that we're living in because there's so much freedom within it. And I think playing with form and shapes within poems gives you an element of freedom that might have not been there always. I think it's really cemented nowadays to be free and of any shape or constriction or meter. I think actually what might be daring is bring back the meter, which I have not done because I don't believe in it. I believe it's an old tradition that academically it has been brought forward as something high and elevated, whereas playing with form nowadays, I find it a lot more interesting. And with the concept of what even is a poem. Is it just a blob of sounds? Is it the shape of it? Is it the space? Is it the confession that you're making within? I think, to me, is still a work in progress understanding what is daring within poetry, but I'm certainly trying to lean into it, and hopefully even more in the future. So I think in the collection there's a lot of elements of anger pulling from my Italian heritage. Italy, as much as beautiful aesthetically it can be, and has had a vast influence on things like art currents and many other things, it also holds a big baggage when you're not born a white cis male canon. It holds a lot of oppression, and I think in the book, the heritage that I show in the book from Italy is the anger, is the oppression that I felt, is the gender role that I felt. So I think there's only one poem where I even mention something that I like about my heritage, but I think more so I have to thank Italy for the content around my anger and general hatred for structural discrimination. So thank you, Italy, for that. What I find the most difficult about poetry is really the vulnerability element of it. Any mean or medium of art and self-expression is extremely vulnerable, but when you deal with poetry, they're really just words. The vulnerability that poetry creates for an author is that you cannot hide behind any medium, you cannot hide behind paint or an image. You're directly using your words. So I think poetry is a very vulnerable element, and within that is, I guess, what I find most difficult, the self-judgment and having to pull away the perspective of what will the external viewer perceive about me. I think poetry is a confessional medium for catharsis, so the difficult element is the vulnerability within that. Yeah. I think poetry should be more daring with who occupies the space. I think less people should feel pressured into not feeling like what they say matters, or into thinking that their form or style is not good enough, because truly there's no canon for it. There's been so many changes, and poetry is so much more free form nowadays than it ever did or ever was. So I do believe that more people should take up space. You don't need an academic certificate to have the right to enter it. You don't need to look or speak a certain way. So I think poetry needs to be more daring with who occupies the space. So if you are thinking of writing, do write and take up that space. There's no particular thing that you need to take away from my collection. I think my only aim is for you to enjoy it and to maybe have a feeling of community and catharsis through my words and my experiences. So I hope you perceive whatever you need to perceive, whatever feels good to perceive, whatever feels difficult to perceive. But mainly, I want you to enjoy it, enjoy the book, and possibly feel a bit less lonely in whatever you're going through. So my book is out, Luck is in the Leftovers. I hope you enjoy it. Please check out also Femme Social Press, the amazing publishing house that gave me this opportunity. But check out The Leftovers in your fridge. Think about me. Think about what luck you might get, unless it's moldy. But yeah, check out Luck is in the Leftovers.